After this last presidential election, a lot of citizens have begun to question themselves. Fear of rejected ideas has led to this internal questioning of whether we voted the right or rather the left way. This has created a divide within our society, and if you don't believe me, just log on to your own Facebook accounts. We've created a political system where we have shut out specific voices, yet we expect our political system to run smoothly. We pride ourselves on being a representative democracy, but we're missing a very key voice in that: children. Because of this divide, we've created a vicious cycle where people who want to partake in politics are hesitant because they fear that their voice won't matter. But it's time that we take responsibility for our political system. It's time we seek out a solution, a simple, feasible, human solution. We tell the younger generation that they are to change the world, that they are to fix the problems that we could not fix. But we rarely give them the tools to do so. So I say it's time we allow children to take their rightful place in the world of politics. So before we dive too much into this, I want to discuss some of the key problems within our current political system. I've spent the last 4 years traveling and competing with the collegiate speech and debate team, and I've encountered a lot of different people, some with very similar views with me and some with very different, but we can all agree that there are currently problems within our political system. The first problem is the non-inclusive environment that we all contribute to. It's easy for us to want to speak out and advocate for things that we're passionate about. Yet, when we encounter someone with a different view than our own, we take a step back. We hold that in because we fear the rejection that comes along with that. There are currently over 200 pieces of federal legislation that affects education. Now take a step back and ask ourselves, how many times were children directly involved with that policy-making decisions? The answer is absolutely none. It's time we allow children to take their rightful place in the world of politics, especially when the legislation we're passing directly affects them. Going back to this non-inclusive environment, growing up, I heard the phrase, "Shh, the adults are talking," a lot. While this may not seem harmful at first, this leads to a society that shuts out voices. This became a trend once I reached high school. I had so many different ideas about politics, education, cheerleading, life. However, none of my teachers and coaches wanted to hear it. Instead, they labeled me a rowdy loudmouth and pushed me aside. That deterred me from reaching any potential I could have reached. Now, my experience was not an anomaly. Let's look to the educational system, and we have wonderful teachers who want to teach their students to pursue their passions, to advocate for what they feel they are entitled to in the world of politics. But we've become a society so obsessed with passing tests that this passion is left out of the classroom. I don't remember the last time my worth in academia was not directly correlated with a test score. You start off simple with your reading test, your PSAT, ACT, SAT, and most recently in my life, the Lsat. Now, while tests do have value, they shouldn't be the one thing we are focused on because we're taking out this passion that youth and children have. We are pushing children to a place of pressure. I want to share my experience with the Lsat, and it's a long one, so I'll condense it. You don't want to hear about the nights I stayed up crying over my Dutch Bros trying to understand logic games. But on the morning of the test, they advised us, use the restroom, this is a 5-hour test, you're stuck here. So, as I'm washing my hands, I encountered 3 young women about my age. To my right, one of them was bawling in the sink. Behind me, one of them was throwing up. And then the third walks in and says, "I just had an accident in my pants." If this doesn't make us step back and ask ourselves, why are we pushing us to a place of pressure, then I don't know what does. Why do we not take a step back and ask children what the best way to evaluate their reading ability to be? What about that high schooler that has hopes on higher education but has test anxiety? My ability to stand in front of court and use logic should not be defined by the Lsat, yet it's the most important part of my law school application. While the system did me well in this sense, it was an eye-opener. It showed me that we shouldn't be focused on passing test after test, but empowering young voices, giving them the tools they need to create a better and brighter future not only for themselves, but of those around them. Now, these two problems of a non-inclusive environment and problems with our educational system may not seem related, but what if I told you I had a solution to fix them both at once, to allow children to engage in the political system from a young age? Let's look at what a world this would be if we decided to install this program. We're going to see benefits not only for children themselves, but for society as a whole. So first, let's look at benefits for children. They are going to develop into a confident youth. Now, this is the age in life where you're struggling with your hormones and your self-image, and these times are crucial in understanding your place in the world. So if we can allow children to be informed and to partake in these decision-making processes, we're giving them a sense of power as well as control, which eventually leads to a positive view on themselves. This will also instill critical thinking skills. There is so much information out there. In fact, a lot of us have the information in the palm of our hands. Allowing these children to sort through that information in a critical thinking manner is going to be beneficial for them. Now, while this all seems like it's focused on the teenage level, let's take it down to the kindergarten level, for example. Take a step back and ask that child when they think the best time for nap time would be. Seems like a silly question, and you might get a few responses that say, never, I will never sleep, don't worry, that'll change once they hit high school and college. But if we're asking them when they think the best time nap should take place, they have to debunk what their day is like. Find the places where they feel most tired, and start using these critical thinking skills. The second benefit for children is that we are teaching them that their voices matter, and they can find empowerment within their own voices. Many studies over the last 4 decades that are based in psychology have found that if an individual cannot freely and expressively communicate their ideas, their mental health will suffer. Children are no different. By just taking those extra few minutes to tell them that they matter and that we would love to hear their ideas about politics, life, school, anything, we're allowing them to become empowered with their own voice. The last benefit specifically for children is that we are encouraging them to find their own political identity. More studies have shown us that children will adopt their parents' political views. It makes sense. This is what they're around. This is exactly what gets filtered to them. But once they hit those adolescent years, they will do a complete 180 when it comes to their views. Now, while they're experiencing both sides of the political spectrum, we see that their views are never truly their own. As adults, we should be feeding them information about current events and life as well as religion. We should not be telling them what they should and should not think, but instead display the facts, allow them to come to their own political identity and their own political conclusions. So those are the benefits strictly for children. Let's look at for society as a whole. The first is that we are going to create a more informed society. Studies show us that adults are more likely to follow laws that they voted on, and they're more likely to stay informed when they are a part of decision-making processes. Children are no different because, again, we're giving them the power of control. Take this back to a school situation, for example. Instead of laying out the rules of the classroom, children are going to be more likely to follow the rules if you sit down with them together and ask, what do you think the rules can be? This is going to help us shape the way our classrooms are run and eventually the way we run our world. Notice the use of are. Adults should not be the only ones making the rules. Well, it is important to have a good bedtime. They should not be the ones that are dictating everything we say and do. We should be allowing these children to partake, to stay informed, present them the facts, and let them not only take those facts in for themselves, but display it to their peers. Imagine what a classroom would look like if you had little Billy standing up in class, telling his peers about some great new thing he learned about healthcare or educational policy that's going to be installed in their own school. We're going to be creating this informed society, not only so they're informed as children, but so they grow up as citizens who would like to stay informed. The next benefit for society is creating effective leaders. Too often, we turn on the news and we see leaders who listen to reply instead of listening to understand. We've overtly created great listeners in children by telling them that we're too busy to hear their thoughts. There's a phrase out there that states children are meant to be seen and not heard. But in this new world, that is not the case. Children are now seen and heard as they should be. We are allowing them to engage in this political system and policies that directly affect them. Children learn by observing, showing us that they are good listeners. They learn how to walk, talk, by mimicking the older people in their lives. So it's time we started giving them something positive to mimic. Now that we understand the benefits of this new society, let's look at how we could implement this. There are 3 levels we should implement this at: the local, the state, as well as the federal. Some of my favorite memories were created when I was a part of the Twin Falls City Youth Council. There's nothing more empowering than standing up in front of City Council, explaining to them your new ideas, and having them actually listen and care. Throughout the support I found here in Twin Falls, I was able to lead a wonderful team of junior high and high school students to start a no texting while driving campaign in the Magic Valley. This is where it needs to start, but we need to take it a step further to not only have these organized groups, but to encourage this at a local level, whether that just be in your home, in your schools, or in your places of work. It's time locally children started to matter. The next step would be at the state level. I say we hold a convention where we invite children of all ages to come together for a week-long program where they can throw ideas back and forth with each other and create effective legislation. These children are so much more intelligent than we give them credit for. At this conference, we wouldn't just scratch the surface level like other programs do, saying your voice matters and you need to be engaged, but instead, we dive under the surface to teach them these skills, to find their voice and how to effectively communicate these wonderful ideas that they have. Let's take this one step further, the federal level. The same thing should happen. We should create a 1-week convention where we send 1 or 2 representatives from each state to take part in this convention, where they can turn their ideas and these new skills they've learned at the state level into legislation. And I say we take it a step further. We allow these children to run a session in Congress. We're going to see that they're going to engage in discourse in a positive manner, something that we can all take note from. If we allow these children to represent their peers in an avenue that has the ability to make effective change, such as on Capitol Hill, we're going to reap all of the benefits I previously talked about. So you may all be thinking, okay, this sounds really great, but how feasible is this? The answer? It's as feasible as you want it to be. These are just small ideas of how you can get started encouraging the youth in your life. We're all a part of communities, whether that be in our schools, our churches, or our workplace. Together, create groups that meet just 1 hour a month with the children in your life so you can discuss important policies that they might be a part of, even if it's socially or governmentally. That 200 number that I proposed earlier about legislation affects these children. They deserve to have a voice in that. Take the time to talk to them about it. The next thing we can do is simply encourage. Encourage young people. Don't tell them you're too busy to listen to their idea. I understand how easy it is to say I'm too busy. Believe me, I'm a senior, I'm about to graduate, I'm taking 21 credits, I'm on the collegiate speech and debate team, I'm interning, I'm working. I understand the phrase, I'm too busy. But our future actually depends on us taking a step back and taking those extra minutes to say, I'm listening. Now, don't call your boss and say, I can't come in today, I have some important issues to listen to. That's obviously not feasible. But if a child comes up to you and states, I have this really cool idea, don't tell them, can't talk right now, have to go to work. Ask them to paint it in a picture, put it in a book, or write a small essay. And then when you come home later, dedicate at least 10 minutes to have them explain the illustration they've drawn. Encouragement is everything. If we want children to change the future for the better and the brighter future we've all been seeking for, then we have to take the time to encourage them. It took me a while to reach any potential I had, just because my coaches and teachers didn't want to invest in me. But once I found someone who was willing to invest in me and to encourage me continuously, I was able to overcome so many obstacles that have been laid before me today. I went from the rowdy loudmouth that teachers bet on to drop out of high school to this confident young woman standing before you today, ready to take on law school next fall. And it's because someone took the time to listen. If we want to tell children that they are the future, that they should change everything we couldn't change, then we have to be willing to invest in them. We have to be willing to encourage them. We have to be willing to stand up alongside of them and say, I'm listening.